Welcome to the Belloc Library's Guide to Creating In-Text Citations in the APA style. If you are unfamiliar with APA and haven't already watched the APA Basics video in this series, you may want to go back and begin there. Otherwise, let's get started. APA uses parenthetical citations, as opposed to superscript numbers or footnotes, to let authors indicate when they are using information from another source. Here's what one typically looks like. The parenthetical citation here indicates two things to a reader. The author of this paper used an idea that originally came from something Coleman published in 2011, and the reader can turn to the reference list and easily find the full publication information because reference lists in APA are arranged in alphabetical order by the first element, which is usually the author. All right, back to the citation. The parenthetical citation frequently comes at the end of a sentence, like it does in this example. But it could be in the middle of the sentence if that's where it makes the most sense to acknowledge the source. But how do you format the names when there is more than one author? Well, when there are two authors, you simply insert an ampersand between the last names and then comma and year. When there are more than two, you only list the first author, followed by et al. Period, and then comma and year. You can even put more than one source in the parentheses if you are making statements that refer to two or more sources, and you can see that in this second example. Notice that you should use semicolons to separate the different sources and order them alphabetically by author. Before we move on to variations on in-text citations, one last example. This is for something authored by an organization. The thing to remember here is to spell out the name of the organization, even if the acronym they use is well known. If you know you will be using the organization name repeatedly, go ahead and add the acronym in brackets to indicate you will be using it going forward. So now onto a variation you'll see quite frequently. Sometimes, especially if you are referencing the same source throughout a paragraph, it can help to use the name of the author at the beginning of that paragraph so that you don't have to struggle with adding too many parenthetical citations. Notice that the date still immediately follows the author's name, which is a signal to your readers that the source appears on the reference list. That said, if you mention Dennis again, for example, the results of Dennis's work also found, ... you would not need to add the date again as long as it is in the same paragraph. I'll talk more about referencing the same source throughout a paragraph a little later in this video. One last thing, if there are two authors, you remember that in parentheses, the two authors are joined together with an ampersand. If you use the names of the authors in text, however, you spell out the word AND instead of using an ampersand. All right, the last type of citation I want to show you is for a direct quote. Although the APA discourages frequent use of direct quotations and prefers paraphrasing, sometimes a direct quote is warranted. In that case, you need to include the exact location where the quote appears by indicating a page number or other location, and more on that in a minute. Here are two common ways to do that, depending upon whether you are using the author's name in text or not. So in this first example, you see the standard where everything is in the parentheses. The page number where the quote appeared is simply added on to the end. P.1. FYI, if your quote spans more than one page, you would use two P's, so it would be PP period, followed by the page range. So if this one were, the quote appeared on pages 1 to page 2, it would say PP period 1-2. So now for the second example, where you use the author's name in the text, in this case, Rudd 2015, and you can see that the page number is separated from the other citation information and appears at the end of the quotation. The two things to learn from this example are that the author and date always stay together, and the page number always stays with the quote. A little while ago I mentioned that I'd say something about alternatives to page numbers for the location of direct quotes. Not every source we use these days includes page numbers, so do the best you can. For text documents, you can identify the section in which the quote appears, such as a chapter or a paragraph number. For videos, you can add the timestamp. For a presentation or lecture slides, you can add the slide number. Basically, do what you can with the format you're given. Okay, let's shift gears and talk a little more theoretically about in-text citing. I think most of us know that not citing enough, or under-citing, can lead to getting called into your instructor's office and accused of plagiarism, definitely something to be avoided. However, the desire to avoid under-citing can lead to over-citing, which, although not unethical or even wrong, it can be annoying to your reader. Let's look at an example. Notice how the same author is cited 3 times within this paragraph. That's over-citing. But how can you fix it without worrying that people will think you're plagiarizing? It's simple, actually. Just add a few signal phrases to indicate all of this information is from that same source. As I mentioned earlier, it can also help to use the author's name at the beginning. Here's what that might look like. Notice how adding the signal phrases at the beginning of the sentences helps connect the information to Williamson, which lets you leave the additional parenthetical citations out. We're nearing the end of this video. Let's take a minute to review. 1. The APA format for in-text citations is an author date system, and it's important to keep those together, even if you use the name of the author in the text. It's the way your reader will be able to find the complete publication information on your reference list. 2. Although APA prefers paraphrasing, if you do use a direct quote, please include location information, page numbers, timestamps, whatever you find. And in that case, the page numbers or location information stays with the quote. And last, avoid over-citing. Although not technically incorrect, it can impede the flow of your words and simply be annoying to your reader. I hope this has helped clear up some of the mysteries of in-text citations, but there are many more variations and so many more questions that can come up. So if you get stuck, head over to the library's APA citation formatting page, which you can find on the Guides and Tutorials page of our homepage, or you can ask one of us directly. Head to the Ask a Librarian page and submit a question, or set up an appointment for us to review your APA formatting together. Oh, and just so you know, we're on the up and up. All of the blurbs in this video were written by Belleck librarians. No plagiarizing here.